not in terms of only India, but the entire Asiatic region, right? So it is completely different. It is not homogeneous. It is heterogeneous. But say it mostly became homogeneous. The third world became homogeneous. All right. Though one might find it difficult to conquer on the basis of this, with Ejaz Ahmed's assessment of what a deeply flawed book. Okay, Ejaz Ahmed wrote about Orientalism and he called it a deeply flawed book. All right, an important reality that the book has allowed us to see, though that book is flawed and we understand that, but there is an important reality that that book has allowed us to see. What is that reality? It is the deep ideological complicity between Orientalism and the project of colonialism. That is complicity, the deep ideological complicity between Orientalism and colonialism, that it is mostly similar. All right, they're complying, they're going together. And ideological level, I don't know what to call it, chinda level, Orientalism and colonialism is almost similar. This indeed is a complex question on what much has been written by researchers, scholars, historians, and social scientists of all persuasions, so that it might be well nigh impossible to summarize the arguments or keep track of the direction in which the research is progressing. Okay, so even though when we became free, we were breaking away from colonialism, the ideological part of colonialism remained with us, and that is the problem that is there in Said's book also. Even when he is creating a different third world, he's saying that we are not how you are portraying us to be, but at the same time he is also falling under the footsteps of the Western world, where he's creating a homogeneous third world, where he's not taking into account the differences that exist, the diversity that exists there. All right, and he's also very much under the ideological strain of colonialism. This indeed is a complex question on which much has been written by researchers, historians, and social scientists. Okay, so this is a very, very complex question that has been debated by everyone. So it might be impossible for us to try and find a summary for the kind of questions and arguments that have been brought about for this particular fact. In fact, it is possible that the conflicting interests of the European powers on the Indian subcontinent during the 18th and the 19th centuries might be said to have cast their shadow on the Orientalist discourse. All right. So probably when the European Indologists were working on Indian literature, they were working on Indian subcontinent during the 18th and 19th century, their shadow is still lying there. They have gone. Right, and our Indian scholars are working on their blueprint. Remember, our blueprint we work on. Probably it is that shadow. Freedom. All right, though Said has nothing to say on this. Said refuses to comment on this. All right, whatever little has been done by recent researchers on this question is enough to indicate that this discourse was saturated from the very beginning with the claims and counterclaims of rival colonial powers, especially the French and the English. Okay, but colonialism is homogeneous. English French Portuguese. So there is a conflict within the colonial powers itself. All right. So this discourse on Orientalism was saturated from the beginning. It was saturated. Why? Because even within the idea of colonialism, there were conflicting ideas. It is the presence of such competing interests that goes on to make this body of knowledge ideological and its complicity with colonialism real. Orientalism, we are breaking away from colonialism, we are still very much under their shadow. Our ideological shadow of the Western world is following us in all of these works. All right, and that is why we can see the complicity with colonialism there. That is what makes the complicity real. The Orientalists' refusal to recognize the value and authenticity of several kinds of modern literature in Indian language then is to be read as a manifestation of this complicity. All right, so Western Orientalists they refuse to recognize that modern literature of Indian regional languages modern literature accept they are completely rejecting it. So that is what we can understand. Probably this is the reason, because they refuse to go away from the ideological idea or European idea that predominantly Hindu, predominantly Sanskrit idea, and that's why for them regional literature is not important. One of the general studies on Indian literature by Indologist Edwin Arnold, entitled Literature of India, was issued in 1902 from a press in New York City called the Colonial Press. All right, look at the irony. India, literature of India, present the colonial press. The suggestion might sound a little too cynical, but it would not be altogether absurd to say that colonial press would have made a suitable imprint for the great deal of ideological material published during this period. Okay, appo the colonial press ilana ediyekkunna adukondu thanne namukku manasilakkam endayirikkum idinte contents enna. It will be mostly under the ideology of colonialism. The above complicity can be seen at work, though at a less conspicuous level, in the scholars' handling of the language question. Okay, അതേ സമയത്ത് ലാംഗ്വേജ് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യനും അയാളെ ഹാൻഡിൽ ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്, എഡ്വിൻ ആണ്. പക്ഷേ ലാംഗ്വേജ് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ അത്രയ്ക്കും അങ്ങ് ഓപ്പൺ ആയിട്ട് is not predominantly colonial എന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്. This becomes important because this was the key issue debated by the literati, especially the Anglicists and the Orientalists in both India and Britain, for over 3 decades in the early years of the 19th century, till it was finally resolved by Macaulay's minute on education. Appa our language problem, okay, for Britishers na problem illa because they all speak English, but India lo vanna parayumbom there is a multiplicity of language, multiplicity of cultures. How to solve this issue? All right, enganeyana oru educational adu undakkunna, enganeyana Indian literature undakkunna enakku parnapol korchu adinte prashnangal maariyide Macaulay's minutes on education adonnu eduthu nokkanam. Okay, Macaulay's minutes endana, he basically and your idea and that know that a few Indians should be educated, and then ഏറ്റവും കോൺട്രവേഴ്ഷ്യൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു സ്റ്റേറ്റ്മെന്റ് ആണ് ഞാൻ ഇപ്പോൾ നിങ്ങളോട് പറയുന്നത്. ഫ്യൂ ഇന്ത്യൻസിനെ നമ്മൾ എടുക്കുന്നു, അവരെ ഒന്ന് എഡ്യൂക്കേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നു, ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് വേസിൽ എഡ്യൂക്കേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നു, ആൻഡ് ദോസ് പീപ്പിൾ കെൻ ഗോ ആൻഡ് പാസ് ഓൺ ദിസ് എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ ടു ദി അതർ ഇന്ത്യൻസ് എന്നുള്ള ഒരു ഐഡിയ ആയിരുന്നു ബേസിക്കലി ഇൻ മിൻസ് ഓൺ എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ, ഓൺ ഹൗ ടു ഇംപ്രൂവ് ദ എഡ്യൂക്കേഷണൽ ലെവൽ ഓഫ് ഇന്ത്യൻസ് എന്നായിരുന്നു ആ ഒരു വർക്കിൽ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നത്. And what is ironical is that until the new economic education policy that was passed the past month, we were following many of the ideas that was there in Minute on Education 1835. That is why we needed the new education policy. All right, the establishment in 1970 of Hindu College in Calcutta, 1970 lanu vannathu, an institution. Look at the name, Hindu College. Okay, let's not comment on that, but it was an institution meant to propagate secular values, Hindu college secular values, through modern English education. All right, but which nevertheless flaunted a non-secular banner in its name. ഭയങ്കര സെക്യുലർ ആയിരിക്കും, മോഡേൺ ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ ആണ് ഞങ്ങൾ തരുന്നതെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു, പക്ഷെ പേരെന്താണ് ഹിന്ദു കോളേജ് എന്ന്. അപ്പൊ അതിന്റെ ബാനറിൽ തന്നെ നോൺ സെക്യുലറിസം ഇല്ല, അല്ലെ? It's a significant moment in this debate that has been characterized by the contradictions and paradoxes. So there are a lot of contradictions and paradoxes within this area, right? And ആ പേരിൽ തന്നെ നമുക്കത് മനസ്സിലാകും. Outwardly, the Orientalists were against the introduction of English in India in the place of Sanskrit. Orientalists എന്താണ് പറഞ്ഞത്? സംസ്കൃതത്തിന് പകരം സംസ്കൃതും പേർഷ്യനും ആയിരുന്നു അന്നത്തെ മെയിൻ ലാംഗ്വേജ്. പേർഷ്യൻ എന്താണ്, നമ്മുടെ മുഗൾസ് വന്നുകൊണ്ടാണ് അവിടെ പേർഷ്യൻ ഉള്ളത്. ഓക്കെ, ഈ രണ്ട് മെയിൻ ലാംഗ്വേജസ് ആയിരുന്നു ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നത്. ബട്ട് they were against the introduction of English to replace these languages. Perhaps they earnestly believed, contrary to the position taken by many social reformers in India, that this was a gravely mischievous step to take for the British administration in India. Okay, അവരെന്താണ്, അവർ വിശ്വസിച്ചത് എന്താണ്, ഇംഗ്ലീഷിനെ കൊണ്ടുവന്ന് ഇന്ത്യൻ ലാംഗ്വേജസ് മാറ്റി കഴിയുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും മേ ബി ഇറ്റ് വിൽ ബി റോങ്. പക്ഷേ സോഷ്യൽ റിഫോമേഴ്സ് ഇൻ ഇന്ത്യ എന്താണ് പറഞ്ഞത്? ദാറ്റ് വി നീഡ് ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് ബിക്കോസ് വിതൗട്ട് ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് വി ആർ നെവർ ഗോയിങ് ടു ഡിഫീറ്റ് യു. വി നോ ദാറ്റ് വി നീഡ് ഇംഗ്ലീഷ്, റൈറ്റ്? ബട്ട് they were afraid. They thought that it would be a mischievous step. It would be a naughty thing for the British administration to do. But the deep-seated identity of ideological interest between Orientalists and the British government on one hand, and the Orientalists and the Anglicists on the other hand, can be seen in the refusal of all to honor the present India represented by its regional languages. Appo pala interestകൾ ആ സമയത്ത് നടക്കുന്നുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. But in spite of all the different debates that were happened, no one talked about the fact that they were all refusing to identify India with by its regional languages. അതായത് ഒന്നെങ്കിൽ ഹിന്ദി, സംസ്കൃത്, പേർഷ്യൻ, അല്ലാതെ ഒരു റീജിയണൽ ലാംഗ്വേജസിനെയും അവർ ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻറ്റ് കൊടുക്കാൻ അവർക്ക് സാധിച്ചില്ല. Looking at things in retrospect, ഇപ്പൊ നമ്മളൊന്ന് ചിന്തിച്ച് നോക്കുവാണെങ്കിൽ, we realize that the real dispute was not between the Orientalists and the Anglicists. Okay, Orientalism Anglicists തമ്മിലല്ലായിരുന്നു പ്രശ്നം, but between regional or local culture and the big event represented by the great Indian culture that both Orientalists and the Anglicists in their separate ways had propped up. അപ്പൊ പ്രശ്നം എന്തായിരുന്നു? റീജിയണൽ ലിറ്ററേച്ചർ നല്ലതല്ല എന്നുള്ളതല്ല പ്രശ്നം. പക്ഷെ എന്താ, Orientalism, Anglicism ഇതുവരെ വെസ്റ്റേൺ വേൾഡിൽ they have created this picture of the East and of India that is very very magical realism ഒക്കെ ഉള്ള ഒരു ഐഡിയ ആണ് അവർ ഉണ്ടാക്കി വെച്ചിരിക്കുന്നത്. ആ ഒരു സംസ്കൃതിനെ പോലെയും പേർഷ്യനെ പോലെയുള്ള വളരെ ഭീകരമായ ലാംഗ്വേജസ് ആണ് അവർ കൺസ്പയർ ചെയ്തത്. പക്ഷെ അതിനെ റിപ്ലേസ് ചെയ്ത് ഇന്ത്യൻ കൾച്ചറിനെ ഓരോ സെപ്പറേറ്റ് റീജിയണൽ ലാംഗ്വേജ് ലോക്കൽ